Hello and welcome. So glad to have you here for another Sarah National session. We come to you each and every week with vivacious, thought-provoking conversation. And this is actually part 2 in a series, but if you missed part 1, it's no problem at all. It's out on Sarah National's YouTube channel as we speak, and you can always go back and hear it. You're still going to glean a lot from today because the topic is leadership that walks the walk, talks the talk, where we're trying to be legitimate leaders out here. So I will introduce myself. My name is Jenny Anchondo. I am here as your host and moderator for these sessions. And my goal is to truly serve as a host, to make you feel comfortable, to make sure that your questions are answered, to make sure that you get the most out of this hour. We're really trying to maximize our time, focus in on a specific topic, get all the information out of it that we can, and then go utilize that in our day-to-day lives. So we have an excellent speaker with us today. Again, I mentioned that Hernando was our speaker last week, who was really, really excellent. She talked about the hidden forces behind performance and driving well-being. And so then today we're talking about that leadership component and how we can stand up and really be those effective leaders. So I'll tell you a little bit about her background so you know where she's coming from and you know that she really can speak to this. She's a dynamic leader, coach, and educator with a passion for helping people and organizations align purpose with action, align purpose with action. So right now she serves in a consultant leadership role at Instaco Global Logistics, and she's really known for driving performance with heart-centered strategy and a commitment to growth. She holds, the woman is well educated. We will say that. I'll go into a couple of the different things here. She holds a doctorate in performance psychology with research focused on moral distress, highlighting her deep understanding of values-driven leadership in high-pressure environments. Raise your hand if you need somebody who is an expert in that. She's also a certified wellness and lifestyle coach and a certified self-talk trainer. So she's really bringing a lot of expertise to the table. It's one of those situations where you realize, wow, we're going to get to listen to this woman complimentary thanks to Sarah, and we better be taking notes. So here's the plan. Let's turn it over to our speaker. I'm going to mute myself, but I'll be watching for those questions and comments. Anna, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on here. I always love being able to contribute to Sarah. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I hope everybody is making sure that they're plugged into the conference and when that's going to be. So they definitely don't want to miss that. Always such a great resource that Sarah has for all the entrepreneurs and the minority groups that they serve. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So like I said, I'm really thrilled to dive into this topic. It really cuts to the heart of leadership. It's not just what we say, but what we do that really matters. I want you to think of a minute, if any of you have children, or maybe you were a child at one point in time, right? You probably heard the phrase where your parents would say, do as I say and not as I do. Well, you can actually take that into your leadership situations. It's not what you say, it's what you do. So today we're talking about walking the walk as leaders and how aligning our values with our behaviors can elevate everything around us. As John Maxwell says, a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. But what does that really mean? Today's session focuses on what it truly means to lead with integrity and why it's not enough to talk about values if we're not living them day to day. The QR code on your screen is a leadership integrity checklist that you all have for free. You can check it out. It's just going to, later in the presentation, I talk about a checklist, and this is an example of one. Feel free to use it. It'll help you in really kind of gauging where you are. Are you walking the walk or are you talking the talk? And so today we're going to explore the 5 main goals. We're going to define that authentic leadership, examine the gap between leaders, what they say and do. We're going to look at some real world examples of integrity in leadership, walk through practical strategies of closing that gap, and finally commit to one aligned action you can start practicing right away. You may have heard of a book called Extreme Ownership, and it's written by a former Navy SEAL. And what he says is that great leadership starts with full responsibility. Think about that for just a minute. Full responsibility. It's not about being just authentic. Jeffrey Pfeiffer, in his book, Leadership BS, one of my favorites, actually says that authentic leadership is more than just transparency. It isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. Authenticity doesn't mean standing up there and saying, we have no sales and we're about to close our doors. We're not even sure if we can pay you. That's not authentic leadership. Authentic leadership is being transparent of, hey, we didn't hit our target markets where we wanted to be. We didn't hit our goals, and so we're going to have to make some adjustments. And here's where we need to go so that we can bring everything back up. It's just being authentic and transparent, but not from a panicking kind of standpoint. Authentic leadership is about self-awareness, internal moral perspective, and the willingness to be real and relatable, even when it's uncomfortable. It means understanding your strengths and your blind spots and showing up in a way that's honest and being willing to adjust when your actions don't line up with your intentions. It's being the same person in the boardroom, at home, with your friends, in front of your team. Your authenticity needs to serve your team, not just your own comfort. This doesn't mean you have to have all the answers, because you're not going to have all the answers. But that's part of the authenticity and transparency, is letting your team know when you don't have the answers, so you can figure out the solution together. You need to lead with clarity about who you are and what you stand for. And to achieve this, it requires honest, reflective practices with yourself. So authentic leadership is that self-awareness, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and your values. What do you stand for? It's about relational transparency, that open, honest communication, having balanced decision-making, considering all the perspectives, and then having that internalized moral compass, which is guided by a strong ethical foundation. Managing versus leading. There's a distinction. Management is about systems, tasks, and control. One of my earlier counterparts told me that system stood for save yourself time, energy, and money. That's what system means. So if you think about managing, you're looking at how can you save time, energy, and money. And so leadership, on the other hand, is about people, direction, and most importantly, influence. You might be great at checking boxes all day long or hitting metrics, hitting those key performance indicators. But if you're not connecting with and guiding your team, you're missing the mark on leadership. It's about showing others not only where to go, but how to get there together. Managers create order. Leaders create movement and growth. Leadership isn't tied to a title. Some of you might be thinking, well, I'm an admin. Well, I'm a worker bee. I'm not a director. I'm not a manager. I'm not a VP. I'm not a C-suite level. Leadership is not connected to titles. Leadership is about influence. That's Maxwell's foundational principle. Leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. So management will tell you what to do and focuses on that control and prioritizing output, but leadership models how it's done, focuses on the influence, prioritizes the people. This is why it's not tied to a title, because anybody can model how it's done, can focus on their influence, and can prioritize connecting and engaging with people. So the crux of this is that talk versus the walk, right? We've all encountered leaders who say the right things, but they don't model those behaviors. Maybe they preach accountability, but dodge responsibility. Or they emphasize work-life balance while only rewarding those who work around the clock. These contradictions create confusion and distress. Think about how that comes across with a team. Your boss tells you that he wants you to be able to have time with your family, to have that work-life balance, but then firing off emails to you at 9, 10, 11, 1 o'clock in the morning. Does that send the message that your time at work is valuable and your time with your family is valuable? No, that's a contradiction. Now, granted, the boss might be firing them off because that's when they're able to actually do it. That's when your boss is able to respond to these emails, or maybe that's when they're having their downtime and able to think about all the things that they want to have accomplished the next day. But as a leader, it's sending a conflicting message to the team. And I'll share with you in a little bit a strategy of how you can shift that. When there's a gap between what we say and what we do, credibility suffers. And so does the team's engagement. I shared before last week on culture versus climate. And I would encourage you to engage and explore the SARE webinar library on YouTube. There's a plethora of impeccable information available to you for free. And so again, I would encourage you to look there. But also know people like Stephen Covey said, what you do is far greater impact than what you say. People remember how you make them feel and how you do that through your actions and your behaviors. That creates influence. What is the impact of misalignment? Misalignment creates real damage. And we talked about that extensively last week in the culture versus climate webinar. It can lead to high turnover, low morale, and a culture where people just keep their heads down instead of stepping up. We spend more time with the people we work with than we do our own family. And so if our organization is misaligned and our leadership is misaligned, then we're having a really icky family. Most people will tend to go to strategy to fix the culture, to fix the alignment. But even the best strategy will fail in a workplace when trust doesn't exist. In fact, Simon Sinek emphasizes that trust is not built by grand gestures, but through small, consistent behaviors over time. Darren Hardy also says that it's the compound effect. So if a leader is not exhibiting the behaviors that they want reinforced in their team, compounded over time, that's going to create complete malalignment. Similarly, Jeffrey Pfeiffer noted in Leadership BS that people often leave their boss, not the organization or the company. And they do this because of the perceived lack of authenticity and credibility. When leaders don't walk the walk, people stop caring. Not just about the leader, but about the mission, the goals, and the objectives. Culture starts at the top, and people mirror what they see. When you have a kid or a child, or you were a child, think about some of the adults that were your leaders. If they're telling you that you have to put on your seatbelt, but they're not putting on their seatbelt. If your teachers tell you that you should be having less screen time, but you see them on the computers. If your doctor is telling you you need to get out and exercise more and have better choices, but you're looking over at their counter and you see their Dr. Pepper and their McDonald's bag from their lunch, are you going to mirror their behaviors? Most likely. So think about your team. Think about your team for a minute. Are you reinforcing alignment or is there a contradiction? The impact of misalignment is the loss of trust because credibility erodes quickly. Low morale, you have disengagement, it spreads, and then worse, that tends to turn into gossip and a whole lot of other toxic behaviors. You have high turnover, good talent walks away because they don't want to be a part of that environment. You have silent quitting, and then next thing you know, you have a pool of just toxic people. And then it also reinforces a culture of fear. Innovation stops. People don't see and feel that your workplace is conducive to being creative and innovative. They're the phrase walking on eggshells because it's not a safe environment for them to express their ideas outside of what they're seeing. So let's shift to the positive. That was a little pretty much of a downer conversation right there. So let's shift to a little bit of the positive. Leaders who walk the walk, they inspire confidence. You see what they're doing and you want to mirror the same thing. They're smiling, they're engaging with conversation, they give constructive feedback. Think of someone who made you feel seen, heard, and supported. Not because they told you, but because of how they acted. It's the manager who advocates for their team when no one's watching, or the leader who admits a mistake before it comes up in a crisis. These behaviors build loyalty and they open the door to deeper engagement. An example of this is a CEO who takes a pay cut. We saw quite a bit of this during COVID. We saw strong companies stepping up and speaking to their teams and letting them know that their C-level were taking pay cuts in order to avoid layoffs. That's walking the walk. It's managers who own mistakes, publicly acknowledging their mistake and then taking the corrective action. It's also executive sponsors employee wellness programs. And this is an executive who actively models the healthy behaviors that the corporation is wanting to instill. This is the boss that you see at the gym. This is the boss that you see taking the stairs. It's all about alignment, and that builds loyalty and trust. If you want to see a change in the people you lead, it starts with you. The leader sets the pace. People mirror what they see. So real leadership is showing up in the hard moments, taking responsibility, making sacrifices, and being there, showing up for and with the people you lead. So why does this matter? There is so many leadership webinars, trainings, articles. You can go to Google and just type in leadership and you will get so many of them. And what's true and what's not true? What's the big deal? Leadership matters because the research shows 87% of engagement is higher when leaders model the values. There's 76% retention with better authentic leadership. And teams outperform by 3 times when trust exists. People remember how you make them feel, and that feeling is shaped by your actions. When leaders show consistency between their values and their behaviors, It builds a culture of safety and belonging. It also makes it easier to give feedback, collaborate, and innovate. Walking the walk builds credibility, inspires discretionary effort, and creates that psychologically safe place. When we walk the walk, we make it safe for others to do the same. Leaders many times have to create a path. So sometimes walking that walk is a little scary. It's a little unsteady. There's a lot of unknowns. Authentic leadership is sharing that with the team. Hey, we're in new territory. We're in uncharted waters. We're going to figure this out together. Here is my vision and ideas. Tell me what you think. How can we collaborate together? This is where we need to go. We're forging a new path to get there. That's walking the walk. So let's talk about some practical strategies. We want to start by checking in with yourself regularly. Ask yourself if your actions reflect the values you promote. You want to create feedback loops with your team and act on what you hear. It's not just putting a suggestion box out there that you want to get their feedback or sending a survey or get their feedback if you do nothing with it. That's actually why most people do not contribute to the suggestion box or the feedback surveys, because they have witnessed that their suggestions or information go nowhere. It's a little bit of a joke in some places where they're saying, does anybody actually read these things? And so if you create this feedback loop, you want to make sure that you act on what you hear. Now, I'm not saying you need to go and do everything that they're saying and recommending, but you at least want to act onto the fact where you let them know that they've been heard and why what they're requesting or suggesting might not be a goal or an objective that can be worked on at this time, but it'll be put on the marker to come back and look at it at another time. It's letting them know that they've been seen and heard. And that is considered acting on the feedback. You want to admit the mistakes and share what you're doing to correct them. For example, we recently had to file some paperwork, and the person who was in charge with this paperwork had resigned, and it got lost in the whole entire system. Nobody had picked up the paperwork. Nobody had known that we had to pick up the paperwork. And so it got lost in the shuffle. 2 months later, conversation came up. There it was. Oh my goodness, guess what? We didn't file this paperwork. Yikes. And of course, panic is ensuing. What does that mean? Are there fines? Are we non-compliant? Where do we go? Oh my gosh, right? All kinds of things. And so the director literally said, this is on me. I was unaware that this was a task, and I take full ownership of it. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and file the paperwork now. And we're just going to put a statement in saying we had our workforce changed. And unfortunately, this task got missed. Now we recognize it and we've corrected the situation. Because guess what? That's really all you can do. Doesn't do any good to beat anybody up. Doesn't do any good to make somebody feel less than. You just admit the mistake. Here's how we correct it. And we keep going. Another part of a practical strategy is you want to make space for other people to lead. This is common in a lot of environments where people say, well, this person won't step up, or nobody else will do it. You have to let people. And sometimes that can be as simple as asking them, hey, could you take lead on this? Or I recognize that you do really great at PowerPoint presentations when you're presenting to us, and it would be wonderful if you could take the lead on this one. We'll be here to support you. What do you think about that? And then step out of the way. Nobody likes a micromanager, even the micromanager. So make space for others to lead. But most importantly, be consistent. In order to have consistency, there must be discipline. Discipline is not easy. Discipline takes focus and commitment. And again, discipline means you're going to be consistent. Again, John Maxwell says, you teach what you know, but you reproduce what you are. Discipline creates consistency, and consistency builds trust. Trust is built in repetition. It's what you do day after day over time that exemplifies, that demonstrates actions and behaviors of what you want your team to do. The 5 dysfunctions of a team talks about what are the 5 components that cause havoc in a team, create that misalignment. And the foundational component is trust. Without trust, you have no team. And if you have no team, you have no need for a leader. So in order to walk the walk, you want to model daily. And it doesn't have to be 100% because you're a work in progress. Remember, it's progress, not perfection. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to forget. You're overriding neuroplasticity and strategies in your brain that have been there for a while. So you're going to make those mistakes. But again, admit it, correct, and move forward and recommit. You're going to invite that feedback and then actually implement some changes. You're going to show empathy, consistently demonstrate that you care. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about all super coddling and like nurturing everybody because it's, that whole little, oh, it's okay, it's okay. No, empathy is relating to somebody, looking at what happened, what's going on with their life, and why they were making the choice that they made, and how you as a leader can help them transform and grow into the role or the responsibilities that you need them to do. And then, of course, empowering others. Help them lead with the same integrity that you are learning to lead with. Now, I want you to pause and reflect for a minute. If you can, write down one leadership value you speak about often. And now think, how have you lived that value in the last 30 days? If you can't think of an example, don't be discouraged. Use this as a checkpoint, an opportunity to realign. To help with this, again, I've created a leadership integrity checklist that I shared as a QR code on the first slide. And I'll share it again at the close. It's a quick self-assessment tool designed to help you identify where your values and behaviors are in sync and where there might be some gaps. Research shows that intentional reflection is one of the most effective tools for behavior change in leadership development. Again, it's not about perfection, but about progress. That former Navy SEALs I mentioned before, Jocko, he says, when you take ownership, you take control. And this reflection activity helps leaders take control by recognizing misalignment and shifting it. So you want to identify your value. What is that one leadership principle you often discuss? Is it integrity? Is it excellence? Is it grit? Is it compassion? What is that one value? And then see how you've done in the past 30 days. Maybe you just kind of started on it, so see how you've done in the past week. Find your evidence. How have you demonstrated it recently? Reflecting on your behavior, and then, of course, you can ask. You can ask your colleagues, you can ask your team members, you can ask your boss. And then share with others and get that feedback. So is your perception the reality of what everybody's seeing? And then just notice those gaps and look at what can you do next? What is one thing that you can do that's going to move the needle closer to being an authentic leadership? And you can talk to your team. What is one action that I could do this week that would demonstrate to you I mean what I say about whatever the value is? And just listen. Thank them for their input. Thank you so much. I'm always working on myself, just like we talk about everybody building the team up and everybody challenging themselves. I'm a continual work in progress as well. That's that relatability. That brings you closer. So let's bring this into your world. Again, think about your team. Think about your daily interactions. And think about your biggest leadership challenges. Where is there alignment? Where might you need to close the gap? What story do your actions tell about what matters to you? Your influence is always on display. What values do you want your team to see daily? Many companies are bringing people back to the office. They're saying, okay, we've done the whole remote thing and we're just finding that we need to bring people back into the office. And so as a leader, you say, we're going to have everybody be on site. And then guess who's not in the office every day? You, the boss, the leader. Are you exhibiting do what you say and not as I do, right? If you're telling everybody they need to come into the office, if you're telling everybody they need to be there at a specific time, then you, as the leader, need to do the same. Of course, unless you have a business meeting or things of that nature, of course, but you're also communicating that to your team when you are going to be in the office and when you are not. Don't let your team guess. If you've told them we're back on site, then you need to be back on site. And if you have to be out of the office, you are letting them know, I will be out of the office. It's on my calendar. Here's what I'm doing. I've got customer visits, or I've got XYZ meeting, or I'm attending a conference. That's letting them know. You want to look at where might your actions send those mixed messages, just like we said. It can be a variety of things. That mistakes are going to happen, we just correct them, but yet you're the first one that throws somebody under the bus and it was your mistake. So what leadership behaviors can you practice consistently? Take it from here and put it out. Because again, you can say things all day long, but your actions do speak louder than words. So we're going to look at that's one action commitment. I want you again to choose one value. Select your most important principle. Then plan a specific action. What's the concrete step that you can take this week? What can you intentionally model? Write it down and share it with a colleague or a mentor. You're not necessarily sharing this part with your team because you want to be able to have a colleague call you out. It's easier to have a colleague or a mentor to actually give you that accountability. It's good to have your team hold you accountable, but you're going to get a little bit non-biased. You're going to get a little less bias if it's a colleague or a mentor. This is, again, going to create that accountability and momentum. So, for example, maybe you've said you value open communication, but your door is always closed. So you can leave your door open more, unless, of course, you're having a private conversation. But leave your door open. Or you value open communication, but you realize you're not very available, right? Or you're distracted. A team member comes in to talk to you and you're doing this, right? Or you've got your back turned and you're continuing what you're working on while they're trying to talk to you. That tells them that you really don't value open communication because you're not present. You're not looking them in the eyes. You're not paying attention to what they're saying. You're not actively listening to them. So, how can you change this? Your action might be to schedule 15-minute weekly check ins with your team members. Have definite questions that you want to talk to them about, but also ask them, hey, we're going to have weekly check ins. These are the couple of things that I want to get your opinion on or get your status on. But I'd like for you to bring questions or share with me anything of your concern. 15 minutes. That's not a lot of time. Okay? The other part is that, again, we talked about leaving the door open. But when your team member is coming to talk to you, put the phone away. Put your screen off and look at them. Have a piece of paper, a notebook, and pen, and let them know. Say, hey, you know what? I really want to know what you're saying. I'm really paying attention. So I might take a couple of notes during this conversation. Then after they've said what they wanted to say, take your notes back and say, okay, I want to make sure that I got this right because I really value what you're coming to tell me. And you said you feel this or this is happening and this didn't work. Did I get that right? Because when you read it back to them or you come back and you say, this is what I heard you say, they might say, oh no, that's not what I said at all. And they say, okay, tell me again. And then that way they know that they're being heard and what they have to say is valuable and it matters to you because you're present, you're paying attention, and then you're telling them back what you thought that they said. So you have a genuine desire to understand and relate to them. Another example could be you've talked about the work-life balance, right? But you haven't modeled it. You're rewarding the people who are working nonstop. You're sending emails to your team all hours of the night. And so your action moving forward might be to honor those boundaries. And so that can look like leaving on time. It can look like when you do your late night emails, you can schedule your emails as to when they're being delivered. Microsoft is great. You can go in there and type up the email so you've got it fresh in your mind, but then you can schedule it to be sent in the morning when your team member is fresh and at their desk. Instead of them thinking, oh my gosh, this came across my phone alerting me that my boss just sent me an email and it's 10:30 tonight. I got to get up and I got to read it. Schedule your emails to go out when your team member is at their desk. Another thing that I recently saw, one of my clients added to the bottom of their email that said, I review my emails at times that are convenient for me as I am busy doing projects during the day. Please do not feel that you need to respond to this email at this time. Respond to it at a time that is more conducive to you. You can put that on your email if you don't get to schedule it out. So you want to make sure that you are showing the behaviors that you want seen and the values that you want to experience. These small shifts, they create ripple effects. Change doesn't happen through information alone. It happens through the action. So I want to thank you for this opportunity today. And I know we have some questions we want to get up there and I want to allow some time for that because, leadership is a daily practice. It's not about the titles or charisma. It's about showing up with integrity. It's about leading by example and taking care of your people, taking care of your team. I encourage you to keep walking the walk and you will inspire others to do the same. Again, the QR code is here for you to revisit and use the leadership integrity checklist. It's a good habit to get in to use monthly or quarterly so that you can assess how you're doing. Are you continuing on or have you slid back in some of your behaviors? And we all slide back. But by checking in and reflecting and using the analysis and practices, you'll be able to pivot and get back on track faster. And so I want to encourage you to connect and share your walking the walk stories on your LinkedIn with your team in your company environment if you do company retreats. And then also you can share them with your families and your friends because leadership isn't just about being a leader in the workplace. It's being a leader in the communities that we serve. And it's also being a leader at home. Everything starts in the home and then spills out. So I want you to share your walking the walk stories. And then continue to learn, access additional resources. Again, the Sarah National YouTube channel has so many resources for you, and the organization itself has so many resources for you. Tap in, they're there. And seek ways to grow your leadership in the community. We want to keep walking the walk together. Now, this QR code is accessible and you can get that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, it's interesting, and I was just going through the checklist, right? Like follow
Mhm.
through on what I say I'll do, hold myself accountable with the same intensity as I do others. And it's interesting because I think that we are so like we many people cherish the opportunity to do this to somebody else, right? If they're the boss and it's like it's review time. All right, here we go. Are you following through on what you say you're going to do? Do you welcome feedback and create space for open dialogue? It can almost be like, in that managerial position, people can feel a little bit like, wow, I'm really excited to do this. I'm really excited to give this critique. And then when you think, oh, wait, this is for me as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
totally different feeling, right?
Yeah. Everybody loves to be in charge and to check on somebody else's behavior, but we always want to examine ourselves first.
Yeah.
Always. And in psychology, we talk about projecting and mirroring. So we always project who we are onto other people. So that's why we always want to start with ourselves. We want to look at how am I showing up? How am I engaging with my team? How am I engaging with customers? How am I doing that? Because we don't want to have two standards, right? Again, do as I say, but not as I do, right? We want to have one standard. And the person who needs to hold themselves to the highest level of that standard is the leader. It's almost as if long ago in my early years, I was taking a certification class, believe it or not, to do aerobics way back in the day.
I love it. I did the same certifications.
Yeah,
I
and
think
the
it's great
instructor
life
said,
training.
yeah, and the instructor said, when you're teaching a class, you have to bring 150% energy because your participants are going to be less than the intensity you bring. So if you only bring 100%, they're going to bring 80%. If you bring 80%, they're going to bring 50%. And that's the truth about leadership. You have to be bringing it up. That doesn't mean you're going to be on your A game all the time. And when you're not on your A game, you're going to let people know, "Hey, I'm having a little bit of a down day today, but I've got to focus on A, B, and C, and I'm going to pivot myself," right? So it's looking at how am I showing up? What level of integrity am I bringing? Because they're going to have less than you as the leader.
That I love that example. I can personally relate to that quite a bit. It's a little bit of a niche example, but I do understand where you're coming from with that in terms of bringing the energy. So taking that time to pause and self-reflect and think, ooh, it's almost like when I looked at that list, even for myself, I'm thinking, oh, do I really want to answer these honestly, right?
Yeah.
And so when somebody finds themselves thinking, okay, like I'm definitely following through on what I say I'm going to do, I'm definitely holding myself accountable. I know I'm doing that, but I don't know how welcome I am to feedback. I don't know how open I am to receiving dialogue because I'm already out here doing the most and you guys are doing 70%. So
Mhm.
what do you say to the leader that's in that position that's like, I am just beat and I'm not wanting the feedback. Talk about some of the benefits they will receive from getting that feedback.
Right. Well, first of all, if you don't want to get the feedback, then you already know. You already know. If you're afraid to get the feedback, you already know that there are areas that you need to work on. And so it's if you can't be transparent with yourself, you are not going to be transparent with anybody else. And so being open, really sitting there for a minute and say, okay, what am I afraid of hearing from my team if I ask for feedback? Right? So what am I afraid of hearing from my team? If I hear from them, oh, well, you say you're forgiving, but you're still holding a grudge for X, because, we showed up late to this meeting, right? So if I'm afraid to hear that from my team, I've already asked myself, if I'm afraid to hear that from my team, then that's something I need to already change. So then when I ask the team for feedback and I hear, well, you're still holding a grudge because we messed up that sales meeting and you told us that, you have open communication and mistakes happen and we're going to move forward, and it's water under the bridge, but it's not water under the bridge because you keep splashing us with it, right? So if you know that that's what they're going to say and they say that to you, then it's looking at them and genuinely saying, you have to be genuine. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. You're right. I'm working on letting that go. I truly value what you guys are doing and the principle of we learn from our mistakes, but I'm still learning from mine. And I'm going to give you grace just as I'm learning to give myself grace.
That's interesting. Yeah, right, right. The mutual grace can be really, really important. If somebody's finding themselves in a situation where they feel like the damage has been done, right? Like they're thinking, I'm ready to change as a leader, but I realize I haven't been showing up on time. I've been calling meetings at 9 a.m. and I'm rolling in at 9:05, 9:06, 9:07. I haven't been telling people I'm so sorry I'm running late. They've been just put in, and then it piqued something with them. What you just said, like, gosh, I'm the problem, right?
It's
What
me.
do you, yeah, yeah, exactly. So what's the next best step? Is there hope there? Do you just start over? Like what's the
Yes.
sort of move here?
Right. Well, I'm always a proponent of admitting when you've made the mistake, even if it's a pattern behavior. And it can be as simple as saying, hey, you know what, team? I just realized I make these 9 o'clock meetings. And 9 o'clock is really not the best time for me to have a meeting for myself and probably for you guys. What's an ideal time that works for everybody? For me, it's probably going to be more like 10. Would 10 be better for everybody? We've had our coffee, we've answered our morning emails, we've got the juices flowing. I can get here at a time that's a doable time for me. I've got all my other things, responsibilities checked off, and I can physically commit to being here at that time. Does that work good for everybody else? Right? It's literally just showing up and saying, this isn't clearly, and because they're joking it, they're laughing at you for not showing up. They're like, oh, okay, we're on honest time today again.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So you just call it out. You just call it out with love and compassion for yourself and for them, and just say, okay, clearly this is not a good meeting time. What time works for everybody? We need to have the meeting, but we need to shift it.
I like that you said it that way, honest. And sometimes we do need an actual, like a script, right? Sometimes you need to hear a script of exactly how it should go down because you have to kind of humble yourself and think, okay, that what wasn't great on my end. Now, let's talk about the person. So obviously a lot of people are here in leadership. Some people are maybe working their way up to leadership and they're not quite the person in charge of the meeting, but they are the employee who's maybe more in a middle management type position. And or maybe even shoot a small business is a family member of the owner and they're thinking, well, I'm always showing up at 9 o'clock and I'm trying to set an example for everybody else, but my higher up is not. What's your advice to that person?
Yes. So I would approach that person, but like, hey, you know what? We talked about open communication. I need just a few minutes of your day, a few minutes of your time, and then approach them individually. We don't call out our leadership in front of everybody else. We pull it to the side. We go and say, you know what? I just noticed that we have this morning meeting and I mean, we're here, we're great on time. But are you sure that's a really good time? Because it doesn't seem like everybody's on time. And I know that you tell us time is valuable. But maybe, there's something that we need to move it. Or I've noticed, right? I've noticed that Bob and Susan and Isabel, they actually are on their A game like 30 minutes later. Could we move it to 30 minutes later? If you know them a little bit more personable and you know them a little bit more, like you've been to their house for dinner or things of that nature, then you can go into that level and say like, hey, is everything okay? Is everything all right? Because I know you call this meeting, but it seems like you're kind of running late or behind. Is there something I can take off your plate that maybe will allow you to get there on time?
Okay. Okay.
Especially if you want to step into, especially if you're building into that next level, is there some responsibility that you would feel comfortable giving me so that I can help so that we can get the meeting started on time?
Yeah, I like that. Okay, I like that. That's a really another really tangible suggestion. I think that's very, very helpful. Is there something I can take off your plate? They might be like my commute, but
Right.
for
They might
9
be like,
a.m.
it's traffic,
I
or
keep saying
once
9 a.m.
again, and depending on where you live, right, traffic can be ungodly. And so having that, again, calling into that awareness, oh, my boss doesn't realize they're calling this 9 o'clock meeting, but we're commuting and now we're stuck in all this massive traffic. So we need to shift the movement. We need to move it back 30 minutes.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I think that's really great advice. And again, and it's like twofold because you're sort of helping the problem and hopefully not reducing the time that's wasted, but then
Mhm.
also stepping in and maybe they'll say, yeah, you know what? I'm always working on the agenda until the last minute and then I don't get it sent out. And if you could do the agenda for me, then I could work on being on time.
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
then I can make sure that I have my focus, right? So then
Yes.
then I say, well, I'm tired. It's kind of like, can I, or do you want me to pass out tardy slips? No, we're not doing that. What we're saying is, and even when you can say, you can actually suggest, would you like for me, I notice, I have the meetings. I know what we're going to talk about. Do you want me to prepare an agenda and I can send it over to you the night before so you to verify and check it off? So if you're really trying to step into that leadership role, you need to be proactive and see what it is that you can do within your skill set or what maybe that is your skill set but that isn't really expected of you, and you can lean in with that and say, you know what, I notice that sometimes you just seem to have so much on your plate, and getting to these meetings and getting them started might be a little bit of an obstacle, and I'd really be love to be able to help you out with that. Could I take on creating the agenda for you?
I love that. That's great. It's really helpful. Question from the audience, and y'all feel free to type in. I'm still monitoring the chat here. Somebody asking what might be some things that a leader can be sensitive to regarding employees feeling that you're micromanaging too much. Like if you're getting feedback that
Hmm.
you are micromanaging or you do the survey and that's sort of the feedback that you get, how do you quell the urge to micromanage? What's a step for that?
Okay, I think I've referred to a couple of times before in the past about a DISC assessment, and so some companies will have them, and that can even be something you discuss. Oh, have you ever had your DISC done? I've been reading about it, right? Be like, hey, you need to take a DISC assessment. I've had my DISC, or I've been looking at DISC assessments, and I'm really curious about that. Have you heard of it, or have you done it? And they might, typically leadership has done a DISC assessment or some other type of personality DISC or leadership
Okay.
profile, and they'll share it with you. At one point, we hired one of the companies that I was consulting for, they hired a VP of operations, and the first time I met him, he handed me his entire assessment. And he's like, and it literally said, this is how you talk to Bob. This is that don't do this to Bob. Don't do this to Bob, right? It was literally laying out. And he was literally like, here, so many times they'll go ahead and give that to you. Um, there is something that's called and I'm always a proponent to advancing yourself through personal and professional development. Um, and there's a plethora of books out there. I've mentioned that one previously, and it's called The Ideal Team Player. And the ideal team player is fantastic, especially if one, of course, you're a boss, but two, if you're a team player, because it identifies three values that every ideal team player should have. Now, you can build on them for sure. And so one of them is being humble. And yeah, and that humble component has to do a lot about not micromanaging people, but also the five dysfunctions of a team, right? Trust. When we micromanage people, we send the message we don't trust them. Now, I come from the school of thought that we Um, we trust and verify. There's a difference between trust and verify and distrust, right? I'm going to trust that you're going to do what you said, but I'm also going to verify that you didn't need my help, that you were able to do it, that you had all the resources that you needed, that it was actually executed. That doesn't mean I'm coming around to your desk and being, did you get it done? What time are you going to get it done? I've worked on projects where people are emailing me, asking me every 4 hours the status.
Right.
That is micromanaging. And so it's just a simple conversation like, hi, I trust you to take care of the things on this project that you are entrusted to take care of. And we've outlined in many of the meetings that these are the things on this project that I am going to take care of. And I will let you know when my tasks are completed. And I'm going to give you that trust. And so we need to have this mutual trust for us to work together.
I love that. Yeah.
But again, and so as an employee, carrying one of those books, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team or An Ideal Player, your boss might not come up to you and be like, oh, what you reading? But if they see you at your desk with that book, they might go, oh, and then they'll go look it up. Be like, ooh, okay. And or you can even, if you have colleagues, you can start, like again, if you're trying to get into that leadership role,
Right. Start chatting with your colleagues
start
about
chatting with your colleagues. Say, hey, you know what? I picked up this book. I would love it if you guys would also get it, and then we could kind of talk about it because we're looking at growing our team. So how can we do this? And that takes that leadership initiative. Again, leadership is influence.
leadership is influence. That is a perfect place to end. I've learned so much from you really over the years, but also more specifically over the last couple of weeks. So thank you infinitely for doing these sessions. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you guys all for having me. And I hope you guys will plug into the SARE library. It's great.
Definitely. Absolutely. And on that note, Anna, thank you so much. And we will see you all next week. Same time, same place. Bye, everybody.